We've all been there. That quiet pang of loneliness, maybe when you're eating alone or you've just moved to a new city. But what if I told you that feeling is way more than just a passing mood? What if it's actually a full-blown epidemic? Today, we are going to dive deep into what loneliness really is, why it's so incredibly dangerous, and uncover a surprising, kind of counterintuitive way to reconnect. All right, let's get into it.
First, let's just start with a number. 3.8 million. That's how many people in the UK are living with chronic, long-term loneliness right this second. It's a truly staggering figure, and it points to this silent crisis that's happening all around us.
And to really get a sense of how huge that number is, let's put it up against another major health issue. Right now, in the UK, about 3 million people are living with cancer. So yeah, that means chronic loneliness affects nearly 1 million more people. This isn't just about feeling sad, it's a massive public health crisis.
Which brings us to our first big idea here, this epidemic of isolation. We live in the most technologically connected age in human history, right? We've got friends and followers just a click away. And yet, somehow, more of us feel completely and utterly alone than ever before.
Just look at these stats. 46% of the entire US population says they feel lonely on the regular. And here's the real shocker. In the UK, a massive 60% of 18 to 34-year-olds say they often feel lonely. The very generation that grew up with social media is the loneliest of all. So what on earth is going on here?
Well, first we got to be clear about what loneliness actually is. It is not the same thing as just being alone. You can be perfectly happy by yourself, or you can feel miserable in a packed room. Loneliness is really a mismatch. It's that gap between the connection you have and the connection your mind and body need. And it has absolutely nothing to do with how good your social skills are. The simple truth is, if you feel lonely, you are lonely, period.
And this leads to a huge reframing of the whole problem. What if loneliness isn't some kind of character flaw? What if it's something else entirely? Something built deep, deep into our biology?
So I'll just ask you straight up, is feeling lonely a sign that you've failed somehow? That you're not charming enough or interesting enough or just not good with people? The answer might really surprise you.
No, it is absolutely not a personal failure. It's a bodily function, just like breathing or getting hungry. It's an ancient signal that has been hardwired into our DNA for millions of years.
Think of it like this. Loneliness is just like hunger. Hunger is your body's alarm system telling you, hey, I need food to survive. Well, loneliness is your body's social alarm system telling you, hey, I need connection to survive. For our ancient ancestors, being part of a tribe wasn't some lifestyle choice, it was the only way to live. Getting kicked out of the group meant you were done for. So our bodies evolved this social pain to act as an early warning system to make absolutely sure we stayed connected.
But here's the problem. The world we've built doesn't match our biology anymore. For most of human history, we lived in these super tight-knit collective communities. Then, starting around the Renaissance, the whole focus shifted to the individual. The Industrial Revolution pulled people away from their villages into big cities, and today, we move all over the world for jobs and school, constantly leaving our support systems behind. Our modern world has basically dismantled the very communities our bodies are wired to expect. And the consequences of this mismatch are, well, they're severe. When that social alarm bell is ringing constantly, day in and day out, it becomes more than just emotional pain. It becomes physically dangerous.
I want you to really let this sink in. Big studies have shown that chronic loneliness is as damaging to your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes every single day. It's twice as deadly as obesity. This is not a metaphor. It's a physiological, biological reality.
So how can an emotion cause so much physical damage? Well, when you're chronically lonely, your brain thinks you're under constant threat, so it flips into this permanent self-preservation mode. This triggers a non-stop, low-level fight-or-flight response, flooding your body with stress hormones. This state of constant alert leads to chronic inflammation, which is basically like a slow-burning fire inside your body. It wears everything down, your arteries, your organs, your immune system, and it can even speed up the aging process on a cellular level. That's why it can make diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's so much deadlier.
Okay, so if we're lonely, and the idea of going out to meet people feels absolutely terrifying, what's the answer? This is where the solution gets really interesting and pretty paradoxical. We're going to talk about the power of solitude. So many of us know this feeling, right? The loneliness builds and builds until you finally drag yourself out of the house. But then the social anxiety just kicks in. Every interaction feels awkward, and the whole night feels like a total failure. So you retreat back into your shell, feeling even worse than before. That classic advice to just put yourself out there can seriously backfire, and it creates this awful, vicious cycle.
And this brings us to the most important distinction of all, the difference between draining, awful loneliness and restorative, peaceful solitude is one single thing: choice. Think about it. Getting fired and quitting your job have the same outcome, right? You don't work there anymore, but they feel completely different because one was forced on you and the other was your decision. Loneliness is isolation that feels forced. Solitude is isolation that you choose.
And here is the paradox. Choosing to spend time with yourself on purpose actually makes you better at connecting with other people. When you practice solitude, you get to know yourself without the pressure of an audience. You become more grounded, more at peace. And this doesn't just make you better at being around other people, it actually improves the quality of the connections you eventually make.
So, how do we actually put all this into practice? How do we use these insights to help ourselves and maybe help the people around us too?
For helping others, there's a really simple framework, the 3 L's. First, look. Look for the signs, people who have suddenly withdrawn or whose behavior has changed. Second, listen, and I mean really listen. Give them the space to tell their story. You'll learn what matters to them, not just what's the matter with them. And third, lend a hand. This doesn't mean you have to solve all their problems. It just means connecting them to something, resources, community groups, hobbies that can reignite their passions.
And for connecting with yourself, that all starts with some self-examination. Remember, loneliness puts the brain on high alert, so it sees threats everywhere. So ask yourself these questions. Am I automatically assuming the worst in people? Am I replaying that one awkward comment from last week and completely ignoring the 5 nice things that happened? Am I turning down invitations just to protect myself from the possibility of rejection? Just recognizing these thought patterns is the first huge step to breaking the cycle and finding the courage to risk being vulnerable again.
In the end, our biology tells us a simple, undeniable truth. We are not meant to do this alone. As George Bernard Shaw once said, none of us are self-made. We're all made up of the people who've helped us along the way. The antidote to loneliness isn't just about finding other people. It's also about choosing to find yourself. Because the better you know yourself, the more truly you can connect with the entire world.